Hello and welcome back to Building on a Budget Models. I'm Thomas and this is the first part of Sebastian Vettel's Red Bull Racing RB8 in 1/24 scale by Revell. Now firstly, most of the bodywork here is one piece, but there are some mould seams around the sides of the nose section and just behind the headrest. I'm using some UMP sanding sticks to smooth those down, starting with a rougher grit and then moving down to smoother grits. Couple around the nose as well, just look really carefully and then look again once you've given it a prime. There's a few parts that need to be added. These vents on the side just next to the cockpit depend on which race you are choosing to use, either that's Bahrain, Germany or India. I'm doing the Indian Grand Prix here, which was one of the races won by Vettel in the 2012 championship. The rear of the Coke bottle section here also needs to be added. There are two parts here which sandwich together. The seam on the top isn't too bad, though the seam where it joins to the rest of the bodywork shouldn't really be there, so I'm going to try and sand that down as best as possible, and again once I've primed it. Assembling the bodywork like so is not in the instructions, but if you want to decal it and clear coat it, then these are essential steps. So the lower section here of the side pods also need to be added now if you want to complete the decals before assembly. The fitment is quite good, and then you can test it with the floor here to make sure the positions are all right. Clip onto this pin here and then put it onto my spray stand. I gave it 3 coats of white primer from Halfords and then sprayed the headrest section in 3 coats of camel yellow from Tamiya. Then that was masked up using some Tamiya tape, and I gave it 4 coats of pearl blue, which is TS89 from Tamiya. This is the paint which they recommended for their RB6 model, so it's pretty accurate for the Red Bull paint which was used in the early 2010s. The air intake roll hoop is 2 separate parts which have been painted in camel yellow, but then the sides of those I found needed to be sanded down to fit as best as possible into the rest of the bodywork. The inside of that was painted in matte black. You've got 3 options for the nose section here, whether you want to paint the yellow, and also there are 2 versions depending on which Grand Prix you are using. This is the one for the Indian Grand Prix. I found some of the coloured decals due to age cracked a little bit, so I wanted to be as careful as possible with these. I put down some micro set to act as a sort of bonding agent, and then once I was happy I added some extra strong decal solution from UMP to help them soften and adhere to the surfaces as best as possible. Look very closely at pictures of the real car to see where this Bull logo needed to go on the side here. As with before, there were some tiny cracks, so I needed to be very careful not to damage it any more than it already was. I used some UMP strong decal solution and a little bit of hairdryer to help it adhere to the position as best as possible. Same with the Red Bull logos on the side pods. You've got these swoosh sections here. Make sure they line up with some of the bodywork because there are also some black decals which go around the exhausts. And then you've got the logos that go down the nose section here. These are the ones with number 1 to show that this was Vettel's car. very gently moving it into position with the craft knife. They were sponsored by Infinity during these years. That deal came to an end when the Renault engine deal came to an end, as Infinity are part of Renault Nissan. There's two options for these decals that go down the side. You can either use a complete one, or there are these with the separate holes for the suspension to be added later. These ones snapped a little bit at the end, so I repositioned the bit that had broken off. Now the front suspension, I'll be showing you how I'm doing that in another video, but there is this little section which goes down here. Then there are some smaller logos like these Geox ones that go here on the side. These E ones that go on the side, I think that's something to do with emergency switch off. Looking good so far. Then there are some very small decals such as Vettel's name and the headrest which go around the cockpit. The Wings for Life charity decals that go just behind the wing mirror. And a Red Bull Racing.com decal which goes inside the cockpit. And there is Sebastian Vettel's name. Looking good so far. I'm going to leave this for a little while before giving it a gloss coat. There are some other decals which I added, such as the black ones around the rear exhausts. They'll need to be painted on the inside in matte black. It's then time to do some of the other aero parts. You've got a couple of options with the rear wing end plates, depending on which Grand Prix you're entering, or the car was entering, I should say. For the Indian Grand Prix as well, these little flap ridges at the bottom were removed. So I sanded those down to make them as smooth as possible. These were primed and then given a couple of coats of matte black acrylic from Hobbycraft. And then you've got decals that go on the inside and on the outside. You can tell which is which by the slots for the horizontal parts of the rear wing. Those were let to rest for a day to smooth out as best as possible before I did the outsides. Needed to position these as best as possible to fit around the edges, as there's also some raised detail for screw heads and that sort of thing, which you need to match up with the decals. Again, I'm using some extra strong decal solution from UMP. I'll let that settle down and then give it a bit of a blast with the hairdryer. Now the front spoiler here was done in the same blue on the top and matte black underneath. And then you've got some Red Bull decals which need to go in very particular places. Matte black underneath. It's well worth doing the decals before assembly with these, because some of them won't be able to go down if you put the aero flaps on top. Patience is the key with a build like this. think there'll be about 10 component parts to the front spoiler, which I'll add later. And here are the rear wing end plates after they've settled down. Those look really good, with the exception of a little crack on the left hand one. I'll fix that later. And then all these are left to settle. Thanks a lot for watching. Please leave a comment down below, like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you soon.